Today we are going to make a creamy, smooth, delicious, dairy-free cheesecake. Hi, welcome to Cake Mom. I'm Abby, and on this channel I share with you guys some of my favorite tips and techniques, as well as recipes to help you with your home baking projects. If you're new or haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel and hitting the notifications bell so that you can see when I post my next video. I wanted to show you guys how to make what sounds like an oxymoron, a dairy-free cheesecake, because so many people in my life right now can't have dairy, so let's make one and see how delicious it is. As always, the recipe will be in the description below, but here is everything you will need. Melted dairy-free butter or coconut oil, graham crackers all ground up, dairy-free or vegan cream cheese, eggs, dairy-free milk, sugar, flour, and vanilla. So before we get started on our actual recipe, you want to make sure that your oven is preheated to 350 degrees and your oven rack is in the very center of your oven. Make sure you position it to the middle of the oven, and then we're going to prepare our cake pan before we get started. I have a spring-form pan that I've lined with parchment paper on the bottom. I open up my pan, set the parchment paper on the bottom, and then close it on the pan. To make sure we get a good seal and no water in our cheesecake, we're going to wrap this in plastic wrap. So next we're going to make the graham cracker crust for this cake. Now make sure you double check your graham crackers that they have no dairy in them. And then we have melted dairy-free butter. You can also use coconut oil, works just as well, you just want it to be melted. You're gonna stir these two together. Another great substitute for graham crackers that is actually surprisingly dairy-free would be Oreos or golden Oreos, and those you just grind up and you add less butter to those because they already have that yummy filling in them. So then take your graham cracker crust and pour it into your spring-form pan. Then you're going to want to press this up the sides about 1 inch to 1.5 inches and make sure you press it into the bottom really well. If you want to, you may have seen in some other cheesecake recipes that they actually pre-bake their crust beforehand. If you're going to do this, you want to line the outside of your plastic wrap with a layer of aluminum foil as well. And then you could pre-bake it for 5 to 10 minutes. I don't generally pre-bake my crust, and I find that it turns out absolutely delicious as well. So I'm not gonna do that, but you can. Okay, so it's time to make the filling. So what you're going to start with is actually your cream cheese and your sugar, and you're going to cream these until they are very well fully combined, very smooth, no lumps. And as you will see in this entire recipe, it is very important to scrape down the sides of your mixing bowl after like every incorporation, everything you add. You want a super smooth batter without incorporating too much air into it. That's the key to keep it from cracking. So we're gonna do this whole thing on pretty low speeds. You can't do it too low or you won't get the right consistency. Starting with the cream cheese. Now, when you're shopping for this, I noticed that there are a lot of different kinds of vegan cream cheese, and you can even make your own. I definitely recommend you find one that is made with a nut base of some kind. Usually they're cashew, but I did notice there was one that was made out of coconut oil. I wouldn't recommend that just because since you're baking this, it'll probably melt. I don't really know, I haven't worked with it well, but definitely if you can, head for a nut-based cream cheese. The cream cheese that I used for this recipe was this brand, Yeild. It's a cashew-based vegan cream cheese. So you can find this at Publix. There's also a tofuti, which I've heard is great for this as well. So just look out for something along those lines, not an oil-based one. Put this in your mixing bowl and go ahead and add your sugar. And then you're going to want to cream that on kind of medium to medium-low speed until it is well combined. It should actually get very soft because the sugar kind of breaks down the cream cheese a little bit, but it'll probably take about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, maybe even 3 minutes. Just keep an eye on it. So So now you want to scrape down the sides of your mixing bowl. Like I said, there's a lot of scraping involved with this because you do not want to have any lumps and bumps or your cheesecake will crack while it's baking and you'll be like, why did this happen? And now it's time to add the eggs. It is very important that these are room temperature because if you're adding cold eggs to room temperature, it just ends up curdling and being weird. If you forgot the eggs in the fridge, a little tip is if you want them to come to room temperature really fast, pull up some hot water from your sink and stick your eggs inside there and let them sit in there for like, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and it works pretty well. So add your eggs one at a time, mixing really well after each addition. Like I said, medium speed, you don't want to crank it up too high. So now once again, you want to scrape down your mixing bowl, make sure you get all the way to the bottom, and then we're going to add the milk. So for milk substitute, I'm actually using the Chobani Oat plain extra creamy milk. It's almost like drinking heavy cream. It's absolutely delicious. But you can use pretty much any dairy-free milk. You can use a cashew milk, a coconut milk, an almond milk. Any of these work. They change the flavor just slightly, but not enough to make a huge difference. So whatever you have, feel free to use it. Okay, so now add your milk into your mixture, and once again, mix it on medium speed until it is fully combined, probably about 30 seconds to a minute. Scrape down your mixing bowl again. And now you're going to add your vanilla and flour, and you're just gonna mix this on low speed until that gets fully incorporated. You don't wanna overmix once you've added the flour, otherwise you get like a kind of tough cheesecake, which is weird. It shouldn't be tough. So add your vanilla and your flour. Give your mixing bowl one last final scrape and then mix it up for about 30 more seconds just to make sure everything is fully combined and you don't have any weird streaks of cream cheese and sugar, and it just needs to be all mixed really well. Okay, so take your crust, take your filling, and pour your filling into your crust. So this is a very important part. This is why we wrapped our pan in plastic wrap. This is called a bain-marie, and what it is it's a pan that's bigger than the size of your cake pan that will hold enough water to go about halfway up your product. This helps your cheesecake to bake super evenly. It's going to end up keeping your cheesecake from cracking, hopefully. So what you need is a pan that's larger than the size of your cake pan. This recipe makes an 8-inch cheesecake, so I have a 10-inch cake pan here. You can also use a roasting pan, anything that has a wall to hold some water. So put your cake down in there. You're going to want to pour some hot water up to half of your cheesecake, or as close as you can to that. Make sure your cake is in the center of this pan. If your pan is like a lot bigger than your cake pan, you'll want to put a towel on the bottom of that to keep your cake from shifting around while you're moving it, because it just will end up with a great big mess. So make sure it's centered, and now you're going to put this whole pan in the oven, the middle rack. Like I said, you want this centered in your oven. Bake it at 350 degrees for 40 minutes, and then lower the temperature of your oven to 300 degrees for approximately another 45 to 50 minutes. You don't want to open the oven door very much while this is baking. You want to keep this closed as much as possible. This is another tip to help keep your cheesecake from cracking, because if you let a bunch of cold air rush in there while it's baking and it's all nice and hot, it just kind of goes wah and cracks. So leave it in with that 300 for at least 40 minutes before you check it. And what you're looking for when you check this cheesecake is that when you jiggle the cheesecake itself, it has kind of like a jello-ish look to the top. You don't want it to be super runny and just in the middle, because you want the outside edge to be fully set. So you want the kind of center of the cheesecake to kind of jiggle just a little bit. You're also gonna look for kind of like a little bit of a lightish browning on the outside edge. Don't want to go too far, because if you go too far, you end up with a dry and cracked cheesecake. So once you hit that 40 minutes, just keep checking on it every 5 minutes to 10 minutes, depending on how well baked it was the first time you checked it. So here we go. Okay, so my cake is fully baked. I left it in the oven until it was completely completely cooled to room temperature, and then I wrapped the top of the pan and stuck it in the fridge overnight. You definitely want to refrigerate your cheesecake for at least 4 hours. I just generally will refrigerate it overnight so that it turns out perfect. When your cheesecake is done baking, you will know this by this nice light golden brown edge. You don't want it to be dark brown or bubbly or anything like that. And the center should just barely jiggle when you shift the pan. Then it's done. If you followed all the steps, I hope that you didn't get a cracked cheesecake, because that is one of the best things, most satisfying things about a cheesecake is when it comes out without a crack on it. So I'm super stoked about this one. As far as toppings go, you can put whatever you want on this cheesecake. I've gone with a homemade mixed berry compote and a whipped coconut cream. Or you can make your own by purchasing a can of coconut cream. Now the trick to this is you want to stick this can in the refrigerator overnight and then just scoop the cream off the top, and you'll have some coconut milk left in the bottom, and then just whip the coconut cream that you get off the top of it and add some powdered sugar. And you're done! You might also really enjoy these vegan zucchini brownies, which are also dairy-free, right here. Go check that one out. And if you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up, share it with all your friends, and comment below. We want to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications bell so that you can see when I post my next video. Have a great one.